Today's top stories at NBR. Analysts boost their expectations for Synlait shares. Sharpest increase in years for KiwiSaver members. Judicial review of vaccination order comprehensively rejected. And there's more coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR Today, a wrap of the day's top business stories from the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz. It's Tuesday, September 28th. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks again for joining us. The government's draft legislation detailing policy limiting the deductibility of interest costs on residential property investments today has failed to impress experts who have long held the changes will fail to have a meaningful impact on housing affordability. The deductibility changes come into effect on October 1st and will be phased in over 4 years, but with several proposed caveats. For investment properties acquired on or after March 27 this year, the interest deduction will cease from October 1st. For investment properties acquired before March 27 this year, interest deductibility will be gradually phased out from October 1st to March 31st, 2025. For new builds, the interest deduction will be allowed to continue. Today's announcement specified for the first time how long that would be, 20 years from the time the property's code compliance certificate is issued. New builds will also be subject to a 5-year bright line test rather than 10 years. Analysts have boosted their expectations for Synlait shares after the milk processor outlined its plan for recovery from its first full-year loss as a listed company, although their views of value remain divergent. In a research note published today, Craig's senior research analyst Stephen Ridgewell expressed appreciation for an apparent culture change instigated by interim chief executive and soon-to-be chair John Penno. Ridgewell said, whereas previously Synlait's focus seemed to be on any stakeholder except for minority stakeholders, what is now emerging is a culture that respects capital, including a willingness to take the necessary if difficult decisions to trim the fat, while resisting the easy option of yet again tapping shareholders for more cash. In April, Synlait announced the resignation of Chief Executive Leon Clement, followed by that of Chief Financial Officer Angela Dixon in May. An IT skill shortage is biting hard as the impacts of COVID-19 are felt on both the supply and demand side of the tech sector, causing prominent executives to ask the government for some visa leeway. As if the nation's productivity and critical infrastructure wasn't already highly dependent on information technology capabilities, tech businesses are now growing even faster as organisations search for digital solutions to pandemic problems. Joining the NBR's Will Mace was NZ Tech CEO Graham Muller.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's pretty dire. There is definitely a shortage, and it has been exacerbated by COVID. What's happened is, the tech sector itself was growing really, really fast anyway, and was creating lots of new jobs. And for the past few years, there's been quite a high reliance on the international talent to fill these jobs, because the new jobs are mainly for senior experience, quite complex roles. And so not a lot of work had been done in building graduate and local domestic pipelines.
NZ Tech CEO Graham Muller with Will Mace. The average fee charged to KiwiSaver members saw its sharpest increase in years as investment returns skyrocketed by $13.2 billion in the year to March 2021, the Financial Market Authority's latest KiwiSaver annual report shows. And that shows the benefits of scale, with total KiwiSaver funds under management now $81.6 billion, are not being passed on to members. FMA Director of Investment Management Paul Gregory said he joined the NBR's Hamish McNicol.
Albeit that we've seen some quite encouraging signs quite recently of providers who have decided to remove administration charges and or to reduce management fees. A couple of them have explicitly talked about having achieved scale or having achieved some sort of scale milestone as part of that decision, and that's encouraging, and we'd expect to see that show up in next year's fee revenue data.
FMA Director of Investment Management Paul Gregory with Hamish McNicol there. A worker fired by the Customs Service for refusing to be vaccinated against COVID-19 has had her application for a judicial review of the vaccination order comprehensively rejected by the High Court. In a judgment issued today by Justice Peter Churchman, the Wellington High Court noted the application followed the worker's dismissal as a result of the COVID-19 Public Health Response Order 2021, signed on April 28th. The order required certain government workers to be vaccinated and was extended by an amendment order in July to cover additional workers, such as those handling affected items removed from MIQ facilities. The woman's employment was terminated on the basis of the original order, and her challenge of that decision at the Employment Relations Authority was unsuccessful. The full details of those stories and more are at nbr.co.nz right now. Tomorrow at NBR, an in-depth look at the bitter falling out over two large Auckland housing developments, and a Kiwi entrepreneur says his business connecting local companies with Indian software engineers has exploded since COVID. I'm Paul Brennan. I look forward to being with you again from around lunchtime tomorrow for NBR's Trending Stories, and then same time, same place, right here from 5:30 again tomorrow for another NBR Today.